Our 2 days have come to an end, and of course we are not by any means done. Over these 2 days, we have all witnessed very rich, vibrant, dynamic, and even critical discussions and insights. We truly value the partnership that we realize with the UN Resident Coordinator Office, as well as the Egyptian Ministry of Planning, within our path to support our government to achieve sustainability and development for Egypt. Without further ado, I would like to ask Mr. Richard Dictus, the UN Resident Coordinator in Egypt, to share with us some closing remarks of our event. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Dictus.
I'm coming to the end of a personal journey. A journey of working with the colleagues from the Bibliotheca, with Dr. Mustapha himself. A journey in which I have worked very closely for a number of days with a number of foreign ministers and a number of prime ministers, which always is a humbling and educational exercise, I can assure you that. A process in which we worked very closely together with the Ministry of Planning, as well as with our colleagues in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, who were with us from the beginning, and I would like to most definitely recognize Assistant Minister of Foreign Affairs, Dr. Ambassador Hani Salim, for having stuck with the process from the beginning. And as you know, personally, I very much appreciate that. There were a number of people with us at the beginning, and there are a number of people who are currently with us, and I have the feeling that as we went along the way, we gathered a lot of support. The title of the exercise was Images of a Prosperous Egypt for 2050. And then I would add to that, in the midst of a very rapidly changing world. We looked at the life of prosperity, well-being, and dignity, which is basically the fundament of sustainable development. Because whether you're talking about climate change or whether you're talking about environment, it's all about how things impact on human beings. We set out to create multiple scenarios, multiple thematic thought processes, and we worked with a very large group of stakeholders in order to come up with a number of alternate futures by 2050. And I want to underline that we very specifically choose 2050 because that was the thought process that we believed that could add most value. We sought out to discuss. We hope that this will be discussed, and we hope that it will be reviewed. But that is as far as a foresight dialogue goes, because foresight is an input to visioning, and visioning is very clearly the process that is being undertaken at the higher political levels, at the highest political levels. And we don't want to get in the way of that. I think by and large you saw a lot of buy-in during this meeting and during the process of a year that we've had into the concept of forecasting and modeling, and linked to that the process of foresight and scenario building. These are global processes by now. These are not things that are unique to any particular country. Many countries engage in that. And I think you've heard the example from our colleagues from Malaysia, and I would like to again express gratitude to them for coming all the way here from Malaysia for attending the panel and informing us of what they do. But you've also heard the input from the colleagues from the University of Denver, and again, thank you very much, Jonathan, for bracing the jet lag and everything that it implies to fly all the way here from Denver to help us in our thinking. Forecasting and foresight are therefore global phenomena, and the question is, how would that now be integrated into Egypt? I think we all see that there's a role to be played, but how that role will be played and how that will be given shape, that is something that I believe the stakeholders nationally now need to try and discuss and debate. What we've done with this exercise is provided proof of concept. How you want to apply the concept is now very much up to a discussion that I believe you need to have. Now, if I want to take myself a self-critical approach at the feedback that we've received, so what feedback did I hear about what we did right? First, foresight is to be placed in the service of the national vision and should focus on sustainable development outcomes, on results. It should provide alternatives, but do so in an open manner. There needs to be a stronger trend and fact analysis as the foundation of indicating the options, the pathways, and the possibilities. We need to develop scenarios to influence thinking, but this actually needs to be based on a need for new thinking. That means that there needs to be a strong discussion about what agenda would be suitable for foresight exercises, and how would the foresight exercise, straight from the beginning, link to important policy or investment questions that Egypt may have. Number 4, a great openness of dialogue is required. The dialogues need to be multi-sectoral, they need to be multi-stakeholder, and they need to be probably multinational. In other words, Egypt as part of Africa, Egypt as part of the Middle East, Egypt as part of the Mediterranean economy, and making sure that the visions that are discussed in the scenarios that are discussed are not closed visions, but are open visions for an engaged Egypt with its regional partners. But also, what is very important is to provide stronger linkages to universities and think tanks, to provide even more venues for their work that they are already doing, the research that they are already doing. And we've seen a number of cases where research was actually brought to the table here to inform the way that we're going. There's obviously a great deal of knowledge in Egypt that we can still mobilize into these processes. And finally, I think there was a very strong validation to retain the long-range focus, to try to help the way in which strategic thinking will evolve between now and 2050, and maybe even between now and the end of this century. Now, how would we anchor all of this? As I said, there is an awful lot of knowledge in Egypt about this. Quite frankly and quite humbly, I believe the only role that the United Nations at this moment has played is to be a catalyst. To be a catalyst for your own discussion and a mobilizer for the knowledge that you already have. I think the sponsorship of the Ministry of Planning, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, but also other parts of the government, think about the Prime Minister's office and the decision-making center there, are very, very important to provide a basis. I still maintain that Bibliotheca Alexandria offers an excellent home for these kind of processes, and that would be something that can be utilized. The space, just a little bit away from the reality from Cairo, but still part of the establishment and not too far away from those realities. I can see that universities and think tanks forming, as just was mentioned by our colleagues from IFPRI, forming a community of practice behind this could actually be a very strong concept. This basically, I believe, gives you the outline of something that I would call the board for the future of Egypt, or maybe the future board of Egypt. I mean, where you put that word future is always a bit sensitive in the English language, and it's not my own language. So, but I think that you have a number of the stakeholders. If you get them together, you can take a look at A, what would be the agenda, B, what would be the best approach, and C, how can we mobilize all the knowledge and skills that we already have in order to inform the dialogue, and then bring groups together in the same way as we've been bringing groups together. It would easily be foreseeable that such a council, if indeed established and nationally supported, could do 6 foresight exercises a year, pretty much along the line that we've done on important strategic topics that are required for different policy issues or investments. You have seen a number of partners at work. You have seen partnership being built. You've also heard my colleagues from the United Nations and the strong support that they have. Just to reiterate what you heard, UNICEF is the organization that works on the future for children. ILO is very, very taken with the future of labor, the future of work. Reports have been written about that. UNDP just brought out a report that looks at the future perspective of poverty reduction, leaving no one behind. The United Nations as an institution is strongly engaged with the future. That is why Sustainable Development Goals are there, and we will continue to support the processes with technical and other services to the extent that we can. Leaves me just a final note of thanks. Again, I would like to thank our international participants for having taken the trouble to travel all the way here and to contribute their knowledge and skills. I would like to thank my UN colleagues for actually their contributions and also sticking with the duration. You were there during a number of the dialogues, and you are there now here again with me. I would like to thank the diehards of the dialogue, and then many of them are sitting on the front seat, who were there in every session that they were invited for, who came back for this one to contribute their knowledge and their views in this final discussion and help give shape to the discussion that we had today. And of course, last but by no means least, I would like to give profound thanks to the Bibliotheca Alexandria, the fantastic facilities that they've made available, but more importantly to that, their incredible leadership and the incredible team under the leadership of Dr. Marwa, who essentially have made this conference happen. On a personal note, I have the gerbil behind everything. She's a young lady called Simone Kaulstetter. This is Simone's last week in the country. This is her last story. Thank you, Simone.
Thank you, Richard. I'm deeply honored and pleased to ask our renowned intellect, distinguished politician, world-class diplomat and mentor, His Excellency Professor Mustapha Al-Faqi, Director of the Bibliotheca Alexandrina, to deliver his closing speech. Professor Al-Faqi has been keen to bring in this partnership to the Library of Alexandria, and since then he has been supporting its development and growth, as well as nurturing it with all means, as well as guiding us all the way through this process. Please join me in welcoming BA Director Professor Al-Faqi.
Excellency, former Prime Minister, Dr. Assam Sharaf, former Ministers of Finance, Education, Irrigation, former President of Alexandria University, Professor Sharif Dilawar, Professor Mustafa Kamil Al-Sayed, Professor Khalid Abu Zaid. مش محسوب انت ولا ايه؟ And I would like to apologize of not being with you yesterday because of reasons out of my hands. I'm one of those who prefer always to talk himself and not to be limited to a certain paper written for him. Though I have one, I'll come to some paragraphs in it, but I would like to start from the correct beginning. Number one, I would like to thank our partner for his insisting always to continue and his stamina for achieving what we have now achieved. And I consider this meeting is not a finale, it's a beginning. On the contrary, we have to continue what we have started before. And here this is a Minister of Communication also. يعني رصيدكم واحد واحد تاني. Former. Still, after the Second World War, as you know, and I'm sure that most of you know better than me, the leaders of the world discovered that the reason behind most of the international conflicts and the regional wars are economical. And you may remember the Marshall Plan by the United States of America for Europe after the Second World War. And they discovered also that poverty is a timing bomb everywhere in all societies. For us in Egypt, this is one of the main barriers between Egypt and its main goals and the dreams. That's why whenever we have somebody who is pushing us towards sustainable development, we appreciate and we cooperate and we feel that this is the correct track for an international institution like this, Bibliotheca Alexandrina. When they started talking to me about this issue nearly 2 years ago, I welcomed, because this is an integral part of our duty, not only to talk in politics or to talk in religions or to talk in history, but it's essential to talk about the future. Because you know, the past is something which we have inherited. The present is something which we are living in. But the future is our real challenge. It's our goal. We have to work for the new generations whom I consider their life will be more complicated than ours. And all signs are showing that. Life will be more complicated. It may be more facilities they will have, but in the meantime, difficulties will be there. Competition will be harder. The overpopulation in the whole world will be a phenomena. And also problems of water, energy, climate change and other issues, whom there are some experts in this among you. I'm not one of them. I consider that these issues will be making life more complicated. That's why we have to think from now of the future for them and for us also. I would like to say there are some remarks written for me here by Marwa. I don't know what she has written, but let us go. Yeah, she wants me to welcome the distinguished Egyptians and international experts, of course, scholars and the government representatives, as well as young Arab scientists, Egyptian students, and African students. Apologizes for not being able to join yesterday. I can assure you that it was out of my hands by all means. I tried, and I spoke to Her Excellency the Minister Hala Saeed, and she was planning to join me today, but I don't know what happened. You know, for ministers sometimes, and we have former ministers here, their schedule is not in their hands always. They don't know what to do in the next day. Sometimes they have fixed an appointment, and they were called by the presidency. They will never look to anybody else. That's life. I would like to emphasize that the Library of Alexandria is a national institution of international dimensions and is considered a center of for excellence for the production of knowledge, a center of promoting cultural diversity, a platform for dialogue, and an incubator for new ideas, innovations, and creativity. I would like to thank our partners, the Egyptian Ministry of Planning, under the leadership of Her Excellency, the Minister Professor Hala Saeed. Maybe next time we will say Deputy Prime Minister, and the United Nations Resident Coordinator Office in Egypt under the leadership of Mr. Richard Dix. I would like to thank you, and I remember all what you have done in the last few months. This is a closing conference which is considered a coronation of the efforts exerted by the three parties to support the national efforts to realize sustainable development in Egypt for the benefit of future generations. The Alexandria Dialogues represents a unique platform to steer up dialogue on sustainable development and to support achieving sustainable development goals in Egypt beyond 2030. The Alexandria Dialogue had a futuristic approach that emphasized the importance of using foresight tools in examining sustainable development studies and its possible outcomes. You are repeating yourself, huh? The Library of Alexandria believes that a great power lies within our youth. I do believe much, and you may agree with me, that youth is the backbone of the future. That's why you have to give more concentration and attention to their needs, their hopes, and even their dreams. They are our future leaders, and therefore we were keen to ensure their participation and engagement in our dialogues and to hear their voices and aspirations for the future. The BA, Bibliotheca Alexandria, has been supporting these young generations, offering them a wide magnitude of opportunities and have been building their capabilities for their intellectual and creative abilities. The Bibliotheca Alexandrina also again has always dedicated great attention to sustainable development issues. It has joined forces with a lot of international, regional, and national entities to support sustainability and has brought together the greatest minds from four corners of the globe to stand upon the new developments. Its establishment of a Center for Sustainable Development Studies and Youth Capacity Building is an example of its commitment to the cause of sustainability and its role as a key player in shaping the future of our country. Before I bid you all farewell, I would like to express that I am very optimistic about the future, I sincerely hope that our Alexandria dialogues and their closing conference would contribute to drawing images of a prosperous Egypt, and that we together would continue to positively impact the future of development in Egypt. I would like to thank you all and to tell you again that the future is our responsibility, and we have to concentrate on future. And the library here will never save any possibility of helping the future to be a glorious future of this country. Egypt, I can tell you, deserves much more than what we have. I do believe in that, and everyone who studies the Egyptian case will tell you the same. I would like to thank you all and wish you all good luck. Thank you.
Once again, I thank you all for participating in these 2 days, and we hope that we will continue to collaborate with you and with our partners in further endeavors and future endeavors to help shaping the future, as Dr. Mustapha said. Thank you very much. Thank you.